Hello, everyone. My name is Christy Nowak, and I'm the composition librarian. And in this video, what I'm going to be talking about is subject-specific databases. So when I say subject-specific databases, all I really mean by that is these are databases that focus on a particular major, topic, or a broad area of research like science. And there are several benefits to using subject-specific databases. One is that because they have that narrower focus, they can have specific search options that are really useful. An example of this is our education database, which is called ERIC, has the option to search by specific grade levels or levels in school. This is really useful if you're doing education research and basically doesn't make sense if you're doing research in any other area. So, because it has that focus on education, it can have more useful search options. The second reason is sometimes you want to see articles that are focused on a particular disciplinary area. For example, if you were doing research on vaccines for a history class, you probably would want to see different information than if you were doing research on vaccines for a biochemistry class. In general, you don't always want to see all of the different disciplinary perspectives on your topic. You might just want to see ones that relate to your major or topic. So, those are two good reasons that you might want to consider using subject specific databases. Also, in general, it's useful to have a lot of options when you search. So you don't always want to be using the same tool. You want to have a good match between, what you're looking for and where you're looking for it. So these can be, just other options in your toolbox for where you might want to be searching. In general, the databases I'm going to be showing you today focus a little bit more on peer-reviewed articles. That's not always the case with subject-specific databases. Sometimes they'll have like book chapters or primary sources, but oftentimes they have a little bit of a focus on peer-reviewed type articles. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and open a browser so we can start looking at some of these databases. And this is the library's website, lib.colostate.edu. And all of the databases we're going to be looking today are under the A to Z database list. And in particular, one of the ways we'll be navigating this list today, because this has 373 databases, so you'll need some way to break it down to find the most relevant ones, is we're going to be using this subject list. So this subject list has, most majors, a lot of different topic areas. So open this subject list and find your major or something that's relevant to you or your topic. Because people are going to have different majors, you're probably going to be looking at a different database than the one that I'm showing. But I'm going to try to show some options that can apply to other databases as well, so that you can apply the strategies I'm showing to whichever database you're looking at. So as an example, I'm going to go ahead, since I was talking about education a minute ago, and go to education. And what you'll see for each of these lists is you'll see a list of databases that are relevant for that particular area. There'll usually be some highlighted in yellow at the top that are labeled best bets. These are really good places to start if you're not familiar with subject specific databases. You're going to want to start with one of these. These also have useful descriptions. So, for example, this is standardized and structured statistical data. That might be useful to me or it might not. So, I could read that and make a determination about whether I wanted to try that database or not. I'm going to go ahead. As I mentioned, ERIC is our premier education database. So I'm going to go ahead and go to ERIC. And it's going to ask me to sign in. I'm off campus. So I'm just logging in with my EID and password, and then I'll be able to use the database normally. And you might notice that this looks familiar to other databases you've seen in the past. A lot of our databases are published by a company called EBSCOhost. They're not the same, they contain different content. ERIC is focused on education resources, but you use pretty much the same strategies when you're searching them. The basic strategy is you put one big idea in each search box. Since this is an education database, I'm going to want to pick an education related topic. I'll go ahead and do online learning and social skills. And as I mentioned, since this is an education database, it does have specific search options. So here's the option for education level where you can look at grades. I'll just do elementary education. So I'm looking for how online learning impacts the development of social skills in elementary education. And I can go ahead and see my search results. I got 8, which isn't a lot. I'm noticing that some of these are using e-learning, so maybe I'll try that as a term. And I can just switch around my search terms. It looks like that gave me a little bit better results. In general, I mentioned the advanced search options. There'll usually also be options over on the left-hand side, like if you want articles from peer-reviewed journals or if you want to specify a date range, these can be really useful options. In general, if you want to see more about an article, you click on the title, and this will give you things like, the abstract, if there are keywords or descriptors that you might want to consider in your search, more information about the authors, things like that. There'll usually be options for things like getting a quick draft citation or emailing it to yourself. These can be really useful. One thing I want to mention is getting full text because there's a lot of confusion about this. In our databases, you should never have to pay for an article, so you should be able to get any of these articles, but you need to know a couple of steps. Sometimes there'll be a PDF right there that you can just click on, and there's that PDF that you can print or save. That's super easy. If you don't see that in pretty much all of our databases, including Google Scholar, if you access it through the website, there's this green Find It at CSU button. And what this does, we have subscriptions to articles through a bunch of different sources. So what this does is checks all of those sources at once to see if it can find that full text somewhere. So this is telling me we have the full text of this article available at Sage Journals Premier. That's just a company name. But then I click on it and that should redirect me to a page where I can download the PDF. So it's redirecting me. Here's my PDF. I can download it. There's the PDF that I can print or save. If it ever happens that either this link doesn't work or there are no full text options, you still do have an option, which is requesting it through Interlibrary Loan. Interlibrary Loan is a free service where if we don't own an article, we'll get a copy for you from another library and send it to your account. It does take some time because it has to be processed by real people, usually like, a couple hours to a couple of business days. And so it's not a good option if you have a paper due in an hour, but basically if there's an article that you really need that we don't own, you can use Interlibrary Loan to get it. You would basically just click on this link, your credentials or your EID and password. It'll ask you some basic information about yourself, and then you'll fill out a page that looks like this, where you just submit your request and you get an email when it's ready. It's super easy. So that's a little bit about what a typical database looks like, how you search it, how you get articles. I'm going to show you a couple of other examples so you can see how this looks different. I'm going back to my A to Z database list. And now I'm going to look at the subject listing for, let's do health and exercise science. And so again, we have best bets. We have some other options. I'm going to click on this one, Medline. And Medline is basically our premier medical database. So it's got medical articles. And you can see when I look at search options, it's got things like age, clinical queries, different types of animals for animal research. And you can see it looks very similar to ERIC. Again, it's published by EBSCO, but it's a completely different database. I'm going to search for vaccines. And once that loads, you can see that these articles have a strong medical focus, as you would expect from this database. Medline is pretty much just peer-reviewed medical articles. So you're going to be seeing different search options and different results based on which database you're searching in. I'm going to show you one more database just so you can see a kind of different one. And I'm back on the library's homepage in the A to Z database list. I want to show you Web of Science. And Web of Science is a very popular database that covers pretty much all aspects of the sciences and to some extent also the social sciences. It's got a very different look than some of the other ones we were looking at, but basically we can use the same strategies. So I'm going to add a row just because I like working with multiple boxes. And I'm going to do wolves and reintroduction. and I'll go ahead and run my search. And you can see that it looks a little bit different, but basically we're seeing sort of the same structure where if I see an article I'm interested in, I can go ahead and click on it to see more information. One really cool feature in Web of Science is you can look at the articles that cite your article and are cited by your article. So, for example, if I want to see who they cited, I can click on this list and I can see a complete list of articles they cited. So, this can be really useful if you're tracking, what the scholarly conversation is. Pretty much everything in Web of Science is peer reviewed, so it doesn't have a specific option to filter that way. If you ever have a question about whether something's peer reviewed, you can check the journal's website, you can contact me, but pretty much everything in Web of Science is peer reviewed. And then since it doesn't have PDFs, you'll always be using that green Find It at CSU button to check whether or not we have full text. So when you're looking in subject-specific databases, you might be seeing something slightly different than what I'm seeing, but basically those strategies will be applicable to different areas where you're going to be looking in different databases you might be looking at. If you ever have any questions about this, please feel free to contact me. This is my name and email address. I'm happy to help you with identifying a good database for your topic or your major. If you can't get access to something, if you have any questions or any other questions about the library. And this is the link to the research guide, which is available online for CO300. There are also research guides available for a lot of other courses as well. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.